All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about an artist who, well, he basically exploded onto the scene. He went from a homeless teenager to absolute art world royalty in what felt like the blink of an eye. And his legacy? It's just as chaotic, just as brilliant, and wildly valuable as his paintings. We're talking about the one and only Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Seriously, just look at that number. Let it sit there for a second. $110.5 million. Now get this, that's not for his entire collection. No way. That's what somebody paid for one single painting back in 2017. It completely shattered records and overnight made him the most expensive American artist of his generation.
So you gotta ask, right? How does that even happen? How do you go from sleeping on a park bench to selling paintings for prices that put you in the same league as Picasso? That's the big mystery we're gonna try to unpack here.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the artist, you have to go back to the beginning. And trust me, Basquiat's story, it was anything but ordinary. We're talking about a super fast, totally explosive journey from the gritty streets of New York City straight into the fanciest, most exclusive art galleries on Earth.
So you can see right away, this wasn't your typical background. It was this amazing mix of influences that all came together to create his style. You've got his heritage, a Haitian father and a Puerto Rican mother, which gave his work this incredible cultural richness. His mom was a huge influence, always taking him to museums, really feeding that raw talent he had. I mean, by the time he was 7, the kid was already fluent in French, Spanish, and English. And the Grey's Anatomy thing, that's such a key part of his story. His mom gave him the book when he was recovering from a car accident. And you know what? Those anatomical drawings, the skulls, the bones, they stuck with him. You see them in his art for the rest of his life.
So his first canvas, it wasn't a canvas at all. It was the city, the whole city. After dropping out of school, he was homeless for a while, and he and his buddy Al Diaz started spray painting these really cryptic, poetic messages all over Lower Manhattan. Their tag was Samo, which was short for same old whatever. But when they had a falling out, Basquiat didn't just walk away. No, he announced it to the entire world in the most dramatic way you can imagine, by spray painting "Samo is dead" on the walls of Soho. It was literally the end of one chapter and the explosive beginning of another.
And the speed of his rise is it's breathtaking, really. Think about this timeline. 1978, he's this mysterious graffiti artist nobody really knows. Just 2 years later, 1980, boom, he's in his first big public exhibition. By 1982, he's a global superstar with 6 solo shows in a single year. And then, just 6 years later, he was gone. He died of a heroin overdose at only 27. I mean, a whole legendary career crammed into just 10 years. It's unbelievable.
All right, so that's the story of the man, the meteoric rise. But what about the art itself? What was he actually putting on the canvas that just completely captivated the world and, now commands these insane prices? Let's try to decode his work.
Okay, first thing you need to know. His art was never just about making pretty pictures. Not even close. It was raw, it was urgent, and it was deeply political. He was tackling the big stuff, head-on. Themes like colonialism, class struggle, and yeah, absolutely fierce critiques of racism. He was painting what he knew, what he experienced. He used his canvas as a battleground, a place to explore and shout about Black identity in an art world that was, and let's be honest, still largely is, overwhelmingly white.
And to really get his impact, it helps to know a little bit of the art history context. He became the poster child, really, for a movement called Neo-Expressionism. So what's that? Well, just think intense, subjective feelings, really rough, energetic handling of paint, and vivid, sometimes even violent images. It was a huge deal at the time. And Basquiat, he wasn't just part of the movement. For a whole generation, he was the movement.
And here's a cool thing, once you know what to look for in his paintings, you start seeing his personal symbols pop up everywhere. You'll see the skull, that's a nod to life and death, but also, remember that anatomy book from when he was a kid? Then there's the warrior figure. A lot of people see that as a kind of self-portrait, the artist as a fighter, battling his way through the world. And then there's the most famous one of all, the three-pointed crown. This is so important. He would paint it on his heroes, Black athletes, musicians, writers, kind of crowning them. But he also used it on himself, which was this amazing, defiant act of crowning himself king.
Okay, so all that theory is great, but let's see what it actually looks like. We're going to take a closer look at 3 of his masterpieces to really see what makes his work so powerful and so incredibly valuable.
And we have to start with the big one. This is Untitled from 1982. Yep,
This is the painting that sold for over $110 million. It's just this massive, electrifying canvas that perfectly captures his raw energy right at the absolute peak of his powers. Now look, the numbers are just staggering, right? But this sale was about so much more than just the money. When it became the most expensive work by a black artist, and, at the time, the highest price for any U.S. artist at auction, it did more than just prove Basquiat's financial value. It sent a massive shockwave through the entire art establishment. It forced everyone to stop and rethink who gets to be called a master in the first place. All right, next up, another iconic piece from that same incredible year, 1982. This one's called Warrior. And you can just feel it, right? It's this powerful, confrontational figure, and a lot of people see this as a kind of self-portrait.
So this one sold for almost $42 million, and it's just pure confrontation. You see the warrior holding his sword, like he's battling for his place, for recognition. But here's what's really interesting, where it sold. It set a record as the most expensive Western artwork ever sold at an Asian auction. And that tells you something huge. It proved his message, his voice. It reached way, way beyond New York City. He wasn't just an American phenomenon anymore. He was a global icon.
Okay, for our last example, we see a totally different side of Basquiat. This shows you just how smart he was, how aware he was of art history. The painting is called Versus Medici, and that title, well, it tells you everything you need to know about his ambition.
I mean, just think about the sheer audacity of this. He's only 21 years old, and he's not just making a painting. He is picking a fight with all of art history. The Medici family, they were the super powerful patrons who basically bankrolled the entire Renaissance. So by titling his painting Versus Medici, Basquiat is basically declaring himself the next in line after guys like Leonardo and Michelangelo. It's just this incredible act of crowning himself, especially for a kid who, just a few years before that, was homeless.
Okay, so let's bring this all back to our big question from the beginning. Yeah, the crazy price tags are one thing, but really, they're just a symptom of something much, much bigger. And that is Basquiat's permanent, absolutely undeniable impact on the art world.
And this right here, this really shows his ultimate triumph. You think about the absolute titans of 20th century art, right? Picasso, Warhol, these guys were the establishment. Basquiat, he was the total outsider, the self-taught kid from the street. But now, today, his work doesn't just hang in the same museums as theirs, it actually rivals them, both in how much it sells for and in how influential it is. The street artist made it into the pantheon of gods. So, when you boil it all down, he basically changed the game in three huge ways. First, he kicked the gallery doors wide open and dragged the raw energy of the street right into a world that had always looked down on it. Second, he used that new platform to give a powerful, totally unapologetic voice to the Black experience. And third, his influence today is it's everywhere. He inspired generations of artists who are still following the path that he blazed. And that kind of leaves us with one final thing to think about. Basquiat's art was this raw scream against injustice, against racism, against inequality. He used every canvas to challenge the people in power. So now, all these decades after he's gone, we're living in a world that's still struggling with those exact same issues. So, you have to ask yourself, has his message lost any of its power? Or maybe, just maybe, is it more urgent now than it's ever been?